At 7:21 p.m. on May 6, 1937, the Hindenburg was not supposed to be a disaster. It was supposed to be a spectacle. A silver airship the length of almost 3 football fields was floating over Lakehurst, New Jersey, late, heavy, and surrounded by storm air. Reporters had come to film a routine arrival. Ground handlers waited for landing lines. Passengers looked out from windows inside a machine that had crossed the Atlantic like a luxury hotel in the sky. For minutes after the landing ropes dropped, the sky caught fire. The Hindenburg did not simply burn because one thing went wrong. It burned because the warning signs had gathered one by one: hydrogen instead of helium, weather charged with electricity, a rushed high landing, a ship that seemed stern-heavy, and a design that could separate electrical charge across its skin and frame. The warnings were there. The airship LZ-129 Hindenburg was built to prove that the future could float. It was longer than the Titanic, lifted by 16 huge gas cells, and designed to carry passengers between Europe and the Americas with comfort that airplanes could not match. Inside were promenades, cabins, a dining room, and broad windows looking down on the ocean. But beneath the glamour was a compromise everyone understood. The safest lifting gas for a passenger airship was helium. Helium does not burn. The United States controlled the world's major commercial supply and would not sell it to Nazi Germany for the Hindenburg. So the ship flew with hydrogen, a gas that lifted beautifully and burned violently when mixed with air. That was not a hidden risk. It was the operating condition of the entire machine. The Hindenburg had already completed successful crossings in 1936, and success can become its own anesthesia. Each safe flight made the danger feel managed. Each smooth arrival made the next one feel ordinary. But hydrogen airships were never ordinary objects. They were enormous structures filled with invisible fuel, fabric, metal, and electrical uncertainty. On May 3, 1937, the Hindenburg left Frankfurt for its first North American trip of the season. Strong headwinds slowed the crossing. By the time it reached New Jersey on May 6, it was more than 12 hours behind schedule. Lakehurst had also been waiting on the weather. Thunderstorms had passed through. Rain had fallen. The airfield was damp, and the atmosphere was unstable enough that landing had been delayed. Delay mattered. A slow, low landing approach was safer, but it took more time and more ground crew. A high landing could bring the ship to the mast faster. On a late schedule, with storms moving around the field, speed became tempting. The Hindenburg circled, approached, and then maneuvered sharply as it lined up with the mast. Witnesses and later investigators focused on what happened next. The ship seemed difficult to trim. Its stern was low. Crew members tried to correct it by releasing water ballast and moving men forward inside the hull. A stern-heavy airship can mean many things. It can mean handling choices. It can mean ballast. It can also suggest a loss of lifting gas somewhere aft. No one on the ground could see hydrogen. That is part of what made the danger so cruel. If a gas cell had leaked, the warning would not be a bright red alarm. It might be a slight change in trim, a flutter in the fabric, a behavior that looked explainable until it was too late. At about 7:21, landing lines dropped from the bow. The ship hung in the wet evening air. The lines reached the ground. Over the next few minutes, the metal frame could be grounded while parts of the outer covering remained at a different electrical potential. In plain language, the ship may have become an enormous charged object looking for a path to equalize. The leading official theory that emerged from the American and German investigations was brutally simple: leaking hydrogen met an ignition source, most likely a static electrical discharge. But simple does not mean unavoidable. The Hindenburg skin and frame were not one perfect electrical body. The outer covering was attached through materials that could let charge differences build. The stormy weather made static conditions more dangerous. The landing ropes, once down, created a new electrical relationship between ship and earth. If hydrogen had escaped near the stern, a spark did not need to be dramatic. It only needed to be enough. At 7:25 p.m., witnesses saw flame near the rear of the airship. For a second, it was small. Then it ran forward. The Hindenburg's tail fell. The bow rose. Fire consumed gas cells along the hull. The giant silver shape became a collapsing skeleton. People inside had seconds to decide whether to jump, climb, wait, or run. Some survived because the airship was already close to the ground. Others were trapped by the angle, the heat, or the speed of the collapse. The entire destruction took roughly half a minute. There were 97 people aboard. 35 of them died, 13 passengers and 22 crew members. One member of the ground crew was also killed. The number could have been far worse. Many passengers survived because the Hindenburg was low enough when the fire began. Some crew survived by dropping through hatches or jumping from windows. Others, especially those working deep in the hull or near the bow, had almost no chance. The tragedy became famous not only because it happened, but because the modern media age was there to capture it. Newsreel cameras were waiting. Photographers were waiting. Radio reporter Herbert Morrison recorded the landing for delayed broadcast. His horrified description became part of the memory of the disaster, even though the audio was later paired with film in ways that made it feel more immediate than the original broadcast. The images did something no technical report could do. They made the risk visible. For years, airships had been sold as majestic, safe, civilized travel. The Hindenburg burning over Lakehurst turned that promise into a warning poster. Public trust collapsed with the frame. Giant passenger airships did not recover. The easy version of the story says hydrogen doomed the Hindenburg from the start. That is partly true, but it is too neat. Hydrogen was the hazard. The disaster was the system built around it: political limits on helium, commercial pressure to operate, confidence from previous success, weather that should have demanded caution, and a landing procedure that put a charged, hydrogen-filled aircraft into a risky moment over a wet field. No single warning sign had to shout. They only had to line up. The ship was late. The weather had been bad. The air was electrically dangerous. The stern was behaving strangely. The lifting gas was flammable. The final approach prioritized getting in. And 4 minutes after the ropes came down, the future people had imagined in silver fabric and polished windows was gone. The Hindenburg is remembered as a spectacular accident, but its deeper lesson is quieter. Catastrophes often arrive wearing the mask of routine. A familiar procedure. A successful machine. A known risk that has not yet punished anyone today. The danger becomes normal because yesterday ended safely. At Lakehurst, the warning signs were not hidden in hindsight. They were scattered across weather reports, engineering choices, operating assumptions, and the behavior of the ship itself. The disaster was over in seconds. The warnings had been there for years.